Hello there, Nerd Soup fans, and more importantly, Game of Thrones fans. We're back, me and the monkey. Episode 3 on our rewatch. We're going strong, Lord Snow, one of my favorite episodes. Every time I go back and watch these episodes, I think, yeah, one of my favorite episodes. Love this episode. I just love the season overall. But yeah, how you doing today, Aaron?
Good, people said we wouldn't be able to make it, but 3 in, feeling strong.
Yeah, right? Oh, do you hear the news about David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators of Game of Thrones, are making a Star Wars trilogy?
Yeah, looks like they're going to ruin that franchise as well.
Well, I think Rian Johnson beat them to the punch. But let's get right into this episode, Lord Snow. And it opens up with Ned arriving at King's Landing. And I think what's funny to note, they don't really emphasize it, but Ned and Robert arrive at King's Landing on their own terms. They're not traveling together anymore. So that rift is already kind of starting to formulate.
They're good friends, but they need their space sometimes. You can't. That's like when you hang out with one of your friends too much and you're just like, oh, God, why do I like this guy? give him some space and you're like, he's not half bad. And I love that.
Are you talking about Teddy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Was that not obvious?
Well, I love, too, when he first gets there and they're like, oh, there's a small council meeting. Do you want to change it to something more appropriate? And Ned's like, no. That's Ned. He's not about formal wear or formalities. Well, I'm here to rule.
Yeah, these next 2 scenes, I think, perfectly shows Ned, the type of character Ned is to the audience, especially the first one with Jaime, which is such a great scene. It kind of builds that rift, that foreshadowing what's going to happen later on in the season between these 2 characters, and it just shows how, I guess, stubborn Ned is to his honor. Even when the instance of talking about his father and his brother, even though Jaime kind of like did him a solid and killed the guy who did it, he still was like, even though I hate the Mad King and what you did saved all these people or gave Robert the throne in a way, you still turned your back on your king.
Yeah, and it's Ned's honor has always been his greatest weakness and strength, because obviously his honor is what blinds him to how he's going to be basically treated when he finds out the truth about Cersei and Jaime and their bastards.
He can legit be on the floor, someone about to like stab him, and you just go up and like kill the guy and be like, oh, why'd you do that, man?
Yeah, you killed him from the back?
You're sworn. Well, actually, he does that, actually.
Yeah, that is true, yeah.
Unarmed, but
well, right.
Makes you think. Maybe he grew up.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. That never happened. It's almost in this scene, it's history repeating itself, because at the end of Robert's Rebellion, when Ned first stormed the throne room, he found Jaime sitting on the throne with Aerys sprawled on the ground.
That's one of my favorite pieces of fan art. You ever see that? Jaime on the Iron Throne sitting there all cocky with his bloody sword.
Dead. Yeah. And it's funny because, at the end of Robert's Rebellion, all his enemies are behind him. And now he's entering the throne room and all his enemies are waiting in the next room. The small council is waiting for you, my lord. But going back to Ned and Jaime for a sec, I think because in the books, you talk about how Ned's honor would blind him to the fact that Jaime did do him a solid. But Jaime is somebody who always wanted the respect of Ned Stark, and he just never got it. Because Ned is an honorable man, and he carries a very powerful and respected reputation.
Well, Jaime still feels what he did to King Aerys was the right thing to do.
Which it was.
Yeah, and I guess he's...
like you said, Ned with these fucking vows, you forsake your king. You started a rebellion against the king.
But it's not like he's
trying to... You and your boy were trying to kill him.
He's trying to portray it to Ned, though, in a Jaime way. Like, he's not saying, hey, listen, like, he doesn't lay out the facts. He's like, well, I thought of them when I killed him. In a very Jaime cocky way.
You can't help but be a douchebag.
Yeah, and Ned's like, all right, maybe just sit down with him, explain to him, map it out a little.
Is that what you tell yourself at night?
And I love the scene with the small council, too, because it's the first introduction to a lot of important characters, Renly, Grandmaster Pycelle, Varys, and Littlefinger. Just off the bat, you can just tell the vibe that Littlefinger and Varys give off. And the only one he really embraces is Renly.
Right. And obviously, Varys and Littlefinger, a lot of people have considered the true Game of Thrones to be between Varys and Littlefinger. And right off the bat, we can see that Littlefinger has the edge, because Ned sits down and they talk about the accounts and how the crown is $6 million in debt. That King Robert wants to have a tournament in honor of Ned. And Littlefinger's like, oh yeah, what's another 80,000? We're already $3 million in debt to the Lannisters. The other $3 million is in debt to the Iron Bank. And it's Littlefinger again. They never spell it out for you. You kind of have to dive deeper to figure out his plans and what he's been doing. But yeah, he becomes the master of coin and he's been crippling the bank. It's part of his plan of chaos, to create chaos.
Yeah, I love how Ned just sets the tone right away when Varys says,
We are all praying for Prince Joffrey's full recovery.
Shame you didn't say prayer for the butcher's son.
Yeah, and he's just not, the whole meeting, he's just not having any of it. You could tell that he's not cut out for it right away.
He snaps at him. He's like, I apologize. Well, I was like, oh, no, we take orders from you. But they say it like in a very snarky way. It's like, no, you're the guy here.
No, yeah, you're definitely in charge. This is your crew. Littlefinger's just in his head the whole time thinking, what an idiot. I'm so smart.
He's already mapping out season 1 in his head.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is going just as I planned it. Hopefully season 7 the books come out, so So George will map the rest. In the next scene, we see Cersei and Joffrey talking. And I love how in this scene, it kind of paints Cersei, where you can see her intelligence and her wisdom. The fact that Joffrey's like, oh, we allow the Northerners too much freedom. We need to raise their taxes and demand that they supply men for the royal army. And Cersei's like, we can't win a war against the North. Or it's nearly impossible. Their country is bigger than the rest of the kingdoms combined. You know, you have to know when to save your strength and crush your enemies. And then it's also Cersei encouraging Joffrey to be a spoiled brat. So it's kind of wise and prudent advice and terrible parenting.
Yeah, that pretty much sums up Cersei,
Yeah.
Well, it's a scene that's obviously not in the books because neither of them have a point of view this early on.
Right.
But
one of the advantages the show has over the books
What?
is that we get to explore certain characters a little bit more.
Yes. And it's like, I always thought in the books, like, Cersei was she thought she was smarter than she is, but I feel like in the show, she's more, I guess, stable in her thoughts of, like, her game plan. Even though she's still a little erratic sometimes, but I think she has a stronger grasp. I think she's just setting up Joffrey. She knows what Ned could possibly find out. She knows there's, like, a hint of doubt out there. So I think she's just prepping Joffrey. We're the only people you can trust. You stay with us.
And she has a great line to Joffrey, too, where she says, when you sit on the Iron Throne, the truth will be what you make it. You know, when your father rebelled against King Aerys, he was a rebel, but now he sits the Iron Throne and he's the king. He makes the truth. Yeah, and like you said with Cersei, she's great when she's in a comfortable position, but once things start to get rough, she becomes more paranoid and she succumbs to her temper. But she is definitely smarter in the show. And in the next scene, we have the Stark family dinner, and I love how Ned tries to get a doll for Sansa, and Sansa's
Fucking
like,
hate that.
why?
I feel so bad for Ned. Just take the doll.
I did feel bad for Ned, too.
It's like when you get a terrible Christmas gift from your grandma. You're like, oh my God, I love this.
Yeah, you got to sell it.
It fits perfectly. Meanwhile, it's fucking...
Last Christmas, my aunt gave me a $10 Modell's card. I was like, oh, thanks. She didn't even know Modell's closed down. I'm like, how the hell did you even get this? You know? Like, oh, I'll get a pair of nice socks, you know? But we also see the rift
I actually
between...
get hyped when I get socks now for Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Now I'm a big sock guy. Yeah, it's like, oh, my God. You really thought about my feet in the winter. You sleep with socks?
No.
Yeah, you can't do it.
War was easier than daughters.
And another scene between Ned and Aria, one of my favorite scenes of the entire series. This is another scene that I always go back to. And we see why Ned was such a great father and why his kids love him so much that even in the later seasons, they continually bring him up. And it makes me wonder if Tywin Lannister had treated his sons and daughter like this, they'd be ruling the world, especially Tyrion. I think that's the main difference between... They're both about family and staying loyal to family, but they have different philosophies on how to treat their children. And it's a very similar scene to the episode 2 with Jon Snow and Arya, where it's Ned telling her to embrace her wild side.
Yeah, and I love the little character moments too, how like it just shows like how quick Arya is, and she asks Ned, like, why would you let Sansa marry a person like that? I guess it dives further into that relationship between Arya and Sansa. Like, they're still opposites, but they're still family. Like Arya says, I don't really hate her. Like, I still love her, but, you know, it's just what families do. And you need a strong person like Ned at the head of the family to kind of give them the right way to go with this. You might not always like each other, but you will love each other.
Yeah, and this scene in the books, I love it too, because Ned talks about how Arya reminds him of his sister. And obviously their arcs are very similar, that they didn't embrace... or they didn't conform to the gender identities of the era, that they wanted to ride horses, to fight, to be knights. And a lot of people think because Lyanna died young, that Arya will die young by the end of the story. I think she dies in Season 8.
I'm really, like, I'd guess for Season 8. I gotta, like, start trying to get my theories together, because I really don't know where they're gonna head with this. But that would be sad, because Arya is one of the best characters. What do we have her, like, top 3 on our list?
It almost, yeah. But I think she's kind of has a death wish.
Yeah, but if she does, I feel like it'll be like something like spectacular.
Like goes out in a blaze of glory. Well,
yes.
Like Lyanna. I mean, her death is very important to the show.
Yeah.
So, you know, she didn't just get like stabbed in the middle of the rain somewhere.
Or no, at a wedding.
Spoiler. Another scene that I go back and watch all the time, this scene between Bran and Old Man. It's much longer in the books, but in the show, it's kind of paraphrasing. A lot of the speech is found in the books when Old Man is talking about the White Walkers, and I'm still waiting for those ice spiders as big as hounds, hopefully in Season 8. But it's a great scene because I guess we can say it's all true, right? The story?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
And Old Man dropping knowledge bombs on Bran.
And I love that she mentions Sir Duncan the Tall, too. Little Easter egg.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you want to hear about Sir Duncan the Tall?
Little Easter egg. Like Aegon. Duncan egg.
Drop the bomb, Nerd Soup Studios. And then Rob walks in the room, and this is sad, you know, Bran says, "Is it true about my legs?" And Rob's like, "Yeah, unfortunately." And Bran says that he'd rather be dead than be a cripple. And it's similar to what Jaime said in last episode.
I guess for both of them too, they both overcome it and become better. Jaime becomes a better actual person, and Bran becomes better in the sense of his abilities. He becomes stronger than he would ever be as a regular boy.
The Professor X of Westeros.
Yeah.
He needs a cerebro.
His lab?
Yeah, his little...
It's the werewoods.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Now, back in King's Landing, Catelyn arrives much quicker than Robert and Ned arrived.
Fast travel. How did Catelyn get from that location to this location in the matter of just one episode?
And this is Littlefinger's first move on really manipulating the Starks. I love that Catelyn looks at Littlefinger like, oh, we can trust him. He's like a brother to me. And we also see how powerful Varys is. He's like, how are your hands? How was that shower you took this morning, huh? Where's the dagger that the assassin used? The assassin with brown eyes.
Look how Varys is behind them, behind the veil, in the doorway.
Yeah.
He's pumping himself up. It's like, oh, I'm about to...
Should I move it with my hands
rehearsing?
or just walk through? Yeah.
It's like, all right, so I'm going to say, all right, then I'm going to say my little birds, then I'm going to ask for the dagger. Or should I ask for the dagger first? All right, get out.
And I love this, too, because Littlefinger's like, oh, who does that dagger belong to? It belongs to me. But I lost it in a bet with Tyrion Lannister. Catelyn's like, I knew it. I knew I couldn't trust these Lannisters.
Well, when I first watched this, the first season, I didn't have a feel for who Littlefinger and Varys. I didn't get the whole spectrum, how deep into the game they are. So I'm kind of like, oh, is Tyrion this two-faced, what's going on with him? Nah, he turns out alright.
Did you ever trust Littlefinger?
No, not really. I think he comes off as a
He's a son of a bitch.
Yeah, but I never thought he was manipulating things like this. I kind of believed. I took his word for him. Like, oh shit, Tyrion, man, come on, kind of liked you.
Our first look at the Night's Watch in this episode, and I love this too because Jon has this superiority complex over all these different rapists and murderers and all these really orphaned boys who are coming to join the Night's Watch. And he's just kicking the shit out of everyone. And we're also introduced to Alistair Thorne, Jon's nemesis. I don't think they kind of explain why Thorne doesn't like Jon.
He's just a prick.
Yeah, but it also has to do with he was loyal to House Targaryen during Robert's Rebellion. And they all sent him up north. Yeah. And then Jon, here comes the spitting image of Ned Stark, one of the guys who sent you to the fucking wall. And this place sucks.
Yeah. I like how Jon, because it's really the only place, probably the only moment in his life where he kind of felt a superiority to his peers. Because he's never had that before, being a bastard in Winterfell. So he's had Robb, Bran, trueborn children around him, those were his peers. So now I guess he finally feels like, hey, I'm the fucking big dog now. I'll take on all three of you guys.
We're also introduced to Gren and Pip. It's funny going back and seeing how they just all hated Jon and now they're all buddies. Well, actually, no, because they're both dead. And we're also introduced to Jeor Mormont, one of my favorite characters. And I love in this scene when everybody, Alistair Thorne is a character that always refers to Jon Snow as a bastard, and he mocks him, Lord Snow. But Jeor Mormont says, oh, there's a letter here for Ned Stark's son, not Ned Stark's bastard. And you can see the respect that Jeor has for the Stark name and the Stark family. And it's a hint to that relationship, that father-son relationship that develops throughout the next couple of seasons.
Even though Ned sent Jorah,
right,
he still has that respect for Ned. He even says when he gives Jon Lawclaw that his old son disrespected it or something, he doesn't deserve it. So he actually takes Ned's side with what he did for Jorah. He has that honor thing. It's a Northern way.
I love Jeor Mormont though. Damn, he went out like a fucking...
Jeor fucking Mormont.
And back in King's Landing, I can't watch this scene in King's Landing when Ned is reunited with Catelyn without hearing the Seinfeld theme and the laughing track.
You're a funny man. Huh? A very funny man.
Ned!
And then we go right back north and we see Tyrion saving Jon. It's the first time that Tyrion uses his tongue and his name to get out of a situation, or to help a friend really get out of a dire situation.
Yeah, and you can see when he's talking to Jon, he's explaining the backstories of the people he thinks he's better than, but he's got to say, you guys are brothers now, you guys are all the same. He tried to feed his family and he got sent to the wall. And just because you had a master-at-arms at home that taught you how to fight doesn't make you any better than your peers. And I think Benjen reiterates that to him later on when they're on top of the wall as well.
Jon tells Tyrion, everybody sent me here, and they all knew what it was, even my father. And I like that, too. It's a nice little nod to the books where internally Jon is thinking, damn, why don't you tell me about this place, Pops? This place sucks.
It's cold, man. We don't have any hats.
Yeah, apparently they don't have a hat budget on Game of Thrones. Pisses me off. And in this scene, we have Catelyn telling Ned about the attack on Bran's life. And once again, it's Littlefinger making himself appear as an ally. And, you know, for Ned and Catelyn, this is the last person you want to trust. But Catelyn tells Ned, listen, we have a history. We grew up together. Littlefinger's like my younger brother. You can always tell that Ned didn't 100% trust him, but what are you going to do? You want to investigate who tried to murder your child. Ned thinks he's doing the right thing, but he's going down a rabbit hole that ends in, well, we all know how it ends. And this is another thing where who sent the dagger? Who sent the assassin to kill Bran?
Joffrey.
Is it Joffrey in the books? Because in this next scene between Cersei and Jaime, it appears that Jaime sent him in the show, right?
They never say it outright.
Yeah, they don't.
Could
they also just be talking about him pushing Bran?
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
That's interrogation. I always thought it was Joffrey. Because I think King Robert says something like along the lines of, it's no way to live, like it would be like a mercy for him to die. And Joffrey was right there. So it's like theorized that Joffrey did it to try to impress Robert. Yeah,
and here we see Jaime's narcissistic personality, the fact that his whole life is based on admiration from Cersei. It's like, I'll kill everybody just so that we can be together. Cersei is obviously more mature. She says it in the first episode that you and Tyrion don't take anything seriously. And yeah, that fucked up relationship is what dominates their arcs. And when you do a rewatch of Game of Thrones, there are so many farewells that break your heart, but this one especially because you could just see the love between them, the love that they've shared, and it's going to be the last time they ever see each other. Particularly when you look at Sean Bean's face. I mean, the man is an incredible actor, and you can just see the pain that he has of sending his wife away. There's nothing more that Ned would want to do than to go back north with Catelyn, go back to Winterfell, be with his family, be a father, but once again, duty calls. He has to investigate the attack on his son. He has a duty to Robert. He has a duty to the realm. It's just sad to see them together for the last time. And in this next scene, I keep saying this for every fucking scene, but I do love this scene we are introduced to Barristan Selmy, and he and King Robert are telling war stories. Mark Addy's acting in this. When he delivers a series, gods, I was strong then. Why? Yeah, just the delivery is on point. And I love that story, too, where he talks about, you know, if that young lad who he killed had just stayed with the smart boys on the side of the battlefield, his wife would be making him miserable, his children would be ingrates, and he'd be waking up 3 times during the night to piss in a bowl. Wine! And we see the main difference between Robert and Ned, where Robert looks back fondly on war. He has nostalgia for war, whereas Ned later in the episode has a PTSD attack. And it just shows that Robert he's a terrible ruler for peacetime, but he's the guy you want during wartime. He's Winston Churchill.
Wow.
Yeah, but he's not as clever.
Yeah, no, it's a great scene as well. I like that we got some insight into Barristan and Jaime. And again, Jaime was just his arrogant cockiness, but it kind of also gives you like a little bit of insight to Jaime as well, and it kind of gives Robert a little bit of sets him back a little when he says the same thing he's been saying the whole day.
When he talks about the Mad King, or the last words of the Mad King. Well, I love how Jaime's also a Barristan fanboy.
Oh yeah,
he's like, man, I saw you kill that guy. Best move I ever saw.
Barristan's like, yeah, it was.
Barristan's like, I'm nice, man. See me in a back alley with a bunch of untrained fighters. You'll see what I do.
Oh, come on.
That's one of my favorite scenes. And there's a scene later in the season where it's Robert and Cersei in that little throne or that king's office, where he does his paperwork.
And anytime you can roast Lancel Lannister, I'm all for it.
Lancel. Gods, what a stupid name. Who named you? Some half-wit with a stutter?
Our first scene back in Essos, Daenerys is learning how to rule. I guess it's a first good lesson to have to rule the Dothraki, because they're so wild and chaotic that if you can get them to listen to you, then you can really just rule anybody.
Yeah, it shows her gaining respect and really realizing, well, I'm the Khaleesi, so instead of feeling like a prisoner and being depressed about it, I can embrace it and, try to become something else.
Yeah. And she gives the command for the Khalasar to stop so she can kind of walk through the grass sea. And then Viserys, man, what a dumbass this guy is. And I love how in the books where they have him riding in the back, but he doesn't realize that it's a sign of disrespect. He thinks like they're doing it for his safety or something. One of Daenerys' bodyguards just whips him around the neck. I thought this was it for him in this scene when I first saw this. I was like, oh, he dead.
I love when she's like, no, tell him I don't want my brother to be killed. And he's like, what? And he looks at her like, are you
He's
sure?
like, should we take a hand or a finger? I love this too, how Viserys gives Jorah the order to kill the Dothraki and Jorah refuses. You could see that his allegiance is shifting between seeing Viserys as the rightful king to really seeing Daenerys as his ruler, the one that gives him commands. here we have Daenerys basically sonning Viserys, and then we go north of the wall, and it's Benjen sonning Jon. And I do love this line. He's like, a man gets what he earns at the wall. Yeah, Jon, what a fucking nutcase, this guy. I want to go beyond the wall with you, uncle. What do you think's beyond there, you sicko?
He's probably thinking, like, I'm going to go to the wall. My uncle's going to be there. He's going to set me up with all his friends. I'm going to be a cool guy, Nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Nope.
No. And this is the last time we see Benjen until season 6, when he comes back as Cold Hands. Do you think he's Cold Hands in the book?
No, George said he wasn't.
No. Do you think George is just being petty?
Probably.
Yeah. Benjen Cold Hands.
I can see him being petty then, and then once D&D made Benjen Cold Hands, he's going to change it right back. Yeah,
I wonder how much he went back and changed just to be petty. I do wonder that.
More than you think, I feel like.
Or
he probably did something, and D&D like did it exactly, like everything. People like, oh, they suck now, like they're ruining the book. So George like, oh, scratch that. Go back, change this, okay.
The more that he takes, the more I think Winds of Winter is going to be the final book. I think he's going to scrap Dream of Spring altogether. And his plan is to release this book before season 8.
I've been like certain, 100% sure. Like,
Dream of Spring is never coming, even if Winds of Winter isn't the last one.
Maybe that is the Dream of Spring.
And before Benjen goes north of the wall, he has a great scene with Tyrion. Not a callback, but the first time that Benjen says, my brother used to say, nothing someone says before the word but really counts. I guess this was something that Ned said to a lot of people, because Jon remembers it too. But it's great that Tyrion doesn't believe anything that they're talking about. The monsters and the ghouls and the White Walkers, doesn't believe it. Do you think that this story might have helped him in season 7, that he thought back on Benjen's story and said, he seemed pretty scared of what was beyond the wall? And the Starks aren't liars.
Yeah, I think so. I think he might have called back to that. And I think just Jon, that trust for Jon and the Stark family that really did it for him. He's skeptical. He only believes, he's a very logical person. So I don't think for Tyrion, the mythical and the magic surrounding this world really resonates with him until he actually sees it.
And in the next scene, we learn that Daenerys is pregnant. And Daenerys learns as well, which I guess this comes into play towards the end of the season, the whole only death can pay for life, and how she's actually going to hatch the dragons. This is another great scene here where Jeor Mormont and Maester Aemon, our first introduction to Maester Aemon, they're pleading with Tyrion to send us more men. He's saying that your sister is queen and she's got the king's ear, and little do they know, we need more men. The Night's Watch is filled with undisciplined boys and tired old men. And I think they scare the shit out of him, because they're concerned. They're not faking this.
Two very wise people, and I think Tyrion can realize that, because I think he fancies himself as being able to understand a person and know what type of person they are. And this is Jeor Mormont and Aemon Targaryen telling you this, so I think it holds a little bit more weight. So yeah, I think he does get a little taken back by it, and also lets the audience in on yeah, this place really is a piece of shit. Not only are there terrible people, part of the Night's Watch, but also they don't have anybody.
Yeah, there's less than 1,000 men. They're getting reports of White Walkers, and they're catching more wildlings every day. So obviously they're fleeing from something. And it sets up really what we don't see it in this season so much, but in later seasons, obviously. Tyrion says his final goodbyes to Jon. And I love how Jon says, "Sad to see you go, Lannister." And Tyrion's like, what? It's probably the first time in his life he's ever heard somebody say something that sincere. Probably the only friend he's ever had, really.
Besides Jaime.
Brothers don't count. And obviously this embrace, going to season 7, the fact when they're reunited, this was very important, this bonding session that they had for Tyrion to believe in Jon, to believe in his character, to advise Daenerys to trust him. And in the final scene of the episode, Arya begins her training with Syrio Forel, the former First Sword of Braavos. And once again, this scene is focusing on Arya not conforming to the gender identities of the time. The fact that, Syrio keeps calling her boy, 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 and she says, "I'm a girl." And he's like, "You're not a boy or a girl, you're a sword." And Arya's like, yeah, I fuck with this guy. And I love that fighting style, the water dancing, that it's based on swift and subtle attacks, not the hacking of the Westerosi knights.
Yeah, it's a great scene. It's Ned really letting Arya embrace her wild side, but at the same time, you see when you hear the swords clashing in his head, the kind of PTSD moment of him in war, and like how you said before, how Robert relishes those memories, Ned kind of knows what it brings. And I think it's a little scary to see his daughter, so fascinated in person. Like, yeah, it might be fun, and you might want her to embrace her wild side, but at the same time, he knows what things like this leads to, what violence can lead to. So it might seem harmless at first, but to him, maybe he feels like it can evolve into something more. And I don't know if he necessarily wants that for his daughter, but
yeah,
it happens anyway. Spoiler, Ned.
Yeah, spoiler, Ned. You're fucked, your daughter's fucked, your kid's fucked, your wife's fucked. Your whole family's fucked. The whole country's fucked. we're fucked because George is never going to finish these fucking books. So that's episode 3. Overall, I think it's a great episode.
Especially, there's not really much action in this episode, but it's more, like you just said, the character moments, learning more about the characters. And I think it's one where even on its own, not even looking back on it, it's still where some people might say it might be slow, but it does so much for each individual character leading into the next half of the season.
Score out of 10?
So I give it a solid 8.5.
Yeah, I would give this episode 7.5. I think it's filled with great character moments. It's one of my favorite episodes of the show. It's in my top 70. Hey guys, thank you for watching this video, and before we go, I want to quickly thank our Patreon supporters. Without your support, we wouldn't be able to grow and evolve as a channel, so thank you for your generous pledges. If you are interested in supporting our channel through Patreon, visit www.patreon.com/nerdsoup, and you can see the different rewards we offer to our Patreon supporters. T-shirts, mugs, stickers, access to our behind-the-scenes video, and more. Thanks again for watching this video, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Or dislike, don't share, and unsubscribe. It's a binary world, folks.
The Starks. Quick tempers, slow minds.